Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, says government is committed to ensuring that South Africa's borders are secure and protected, especially over the festive season. This comes after the Border Management Authority announced that 443 children were rescued from human trafficking at the Beitbridge border post on Saturday evening. The authority says measures are being taken to contact authorities in Zimbabwe to trace the parents or guardians of these children. Let's get you a sense of what else we know. Bring in the Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, who joins us via our video link this Monday morning. And it's great to have you on the program as always, Minister. Thanks very much indeed for making time. This is really a shocking story, and it's no surprise that it's on the front pages of some newspapers today. But let's begin with what you reckon it is about the situation that convinced you and authorities that these children were indeed possibly being trafficked.
Well, it does not necessarily mean that we're convinced that we are being trafficked, but all indications, if you find children 8 years and younger crossing a border without any parent, without any guardian, without any requisite documents except the passport, the only safest conclusion you must reach is the fact that they are being trafficked until proven otherwise. Even if you can prove that they are not being trafficked, what has happened is grossly illegal and it should not be allowed in any country.
Absolutely. Are you able to explain to us the conditions that these children were in? I mean, to have 400 children in about 40-odd buses, at the very least, one has to worry about capacity issues, amongst other concerns, of course.
Well, look, it was not necessarily that they were a convoy. The operation that was happening, remember the border guards, their job is access control. They control who must come in and who must get out of South Africa. That's access control. They were doing their access control work throughout the whole day. And throughout that period, they found these children in 42 different buses. It does not mean that the buses were convoying and all of them transporting the 443 children. That would have been stupid and obvious. But they got them in different buses, the total of which is 42, over that period of the whole night when they were doing the operation.
Sure. And again, Minister, the condition of these children, how would you describe it?
Well, I didn't personally see them, but nothing untoward was described to me about their condition.
All right. There's going to be a lot of questions also about how they were able to get to the border itself. And there's already been statements attributed to the BMA about contacting Zimbabwean counterparts to find out at least what their end of the story looks like. Has that happened yet? Have there been any details?
Yes, because they didn't allow them into the country. They had to send them to Zimbabwe, and you can only hand them to the authorities in Zimbabwe to start investigation and find out, is this really child trafficking? Is it human trafficking? If it is not, why was it allowed? Because even if it might not have been trafficking, it is still illegal for something like that to happen.
Yeah, and what did they say?
Excuse me?
What did the authorities in Zimbabwe say? I mean, there has to be questions about how they were able to use to begin with.
Waiting.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We are waiting for them because, first of all, they must find the parents of the children, find out if this happened with their knowledge, if they were really trafficking. Look, Ayanda, if you bring a child into the country, even if that child has got a passport, nobody says you can't be trafficked with a passport. The fact remains you don't expect an 8-year-old child to be found in some conveyance, whether a plane or a car or a train or a bus, crossing a border, and yet there's no other documents from parents, from authorities, from any other person, except that that child is carrying a passport. It's much safer to regard it as trafficking until proven otherwise. Then after proving otherwise, the next step is, what was it? And what were the parents thinking, or whoever was transporting them, what were they thinking?
Of course, there must have been some adults with the children. I'm thinking of the bus drivers at the very least. There must have been an opportunity to ask them several questions as well around what on earth is happening here. Have we been able to glean anything from engaging with the bus drivers?
Well, the bus drivers, I understand, just said, and unfortunately, Ayanda, I must confess, it's just that our border guards are new. They might not have known, because I believe they should have arrested those drivers.
Absolutely.
They should have been in custody now. Yes, but they said no, because the children produced passports. The drivers might have thought this a legal operation, which I don't think is correct. I think, but it goes according to experience of our border guards, because they are still learning the laws. The laws at the borders of international laws are very complex, but they should have arrested them, because I understand on questioning, they just said no. They got messages that they must collect children from this point, from that point, from that point, which is a grossly inadequate story. But I'm sure they'll still be able to look for them. They'll still be found, because they can't just disappear into Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwean authorities must know about them.
Well, is that really the case, Minister? Because my next question was going to be, there's a very high chance that these guys have gotten away scot-free. I mean, if they're able to get back into their home country, knowing that there is this concerted effort now to find out what on earth may be happening, and this happened on Saturday night, there's a very real chance that, in fact, they might have gotten to a point where it might be difficult, if not impossible, to find them.
Well, look, since the establishment of the BMA, we have got quite a number of buses which were conveying people across the borders illegally. And many of them are in business. They can't just stop. Many of them, their job was not just to bring those people who are illegal at that time and see. It's their everyday job. It's their bread and butter. They don't just disappear. Some of them who we charge money. Remember when we found you conveying an illegal person across the border, you get charged 15,000 rand per that person. Some of the bus companies are struggling to pay that money, but they still come. We still catch them time and again. So we believe you can't just disappear, because this is your job, it's your livelihood.
So at the very least, we're hoping that eventually they're going to want to make their way back to the border, and that's how they'll be found. Let me ask this question then. Were we able to at least take any of their details such that if they do return to the border, they're easily identifiable and can be apprehended?
Yes. That's why I'm saying when they were handed in, they were handed over to the Zimbabwean authorities. You don't just hand a person over to authorities when you find them in your country illegally. Even when we deport people, we follow the same procedure. You have got to take their details and know who you have handed over in case something happens. So they are handing over to Zimbabwean authorities is with details taken. It's not just throwing them and say, there are your people. You actually take details that we have handed over so and so to so and so at this and that time.
Sure. What this moment has obviously done, Minister, has raised all kinds of questions about how many other children, or anybody quite frankly, could have passed the border post without being detected. Because this was found during a sting operation, and understandably you can't carry out sting operations for 365 days in a year. How worried are you about the possibility of people going through the border in this way, given how many people you were able to find in just one sting operation?
I'm not sure I understand exactly why somebody or our officials decided to call this a sting operation. As I told you, the job of the border guards is to control access. Now that it's December, it's just heightened activity. They were just having a heightened surveillance. That's why they included South African police services and other law enforcement agencies, because it's December. Otherwise, they were doing their job, which they are supposed to be doing every day. I don't know whether because they decided to bring other forces for a heightened activity, then it qualifies as a sting operation, but I won't really call it that. I'll call it the job of access control at the borders. Remember, our border guards are just slightly more than a year in existence in doing the work at the borders. Yeah. And so if you say some children might have crossed before, yes, I agree, before we had the border guards, because the very reason that we had the border guards was that we were worried about the porousness of our borders.
Absolutely. And, at the time of launching this authority, there had been questions around our ability to sustain it at the level that we need it to be, given just how multi-layered our problems are at the border post. Questions around, for example, the costs that are associated with this. Since the launch to this point, and given how much work still needs to be done, is that a major concern still for you as a ministry?
Well, look, we have got no choice about sustaining the Border Management Authority. Remember, There are people who believe I came with the concept of the Border Management Authority. I found it already there. The concept started in 2009, long before, maybe 10 years before I entered the Department of Home Affairs. It was a concept developed by NICOC. NICOC is the structure that coordinates all intelligence services in the country. It coordinates military intelligence, crime intelligence, financial intelligence center, and state security. It brings them together and they coordinate. Every year, they produce what we call intelligence estimate to estimate the security around the country. And that is in 2009 when they came across the conclusion that what is happening at our borders is not safe for the country. And they said the Border Management Authority must be established. Unfortunately, it took 10 years for the act to be finalized in Parliament. And that's why we only started instituting it last year. So because it's an act of Parliament and because it was identified, we've got no option but to sustain it. The border guards, which we had up so far, are 200. In October, when the President went to launch it officially, on the 5th of October, we announced a further 400 who will be coming. That is still the beginning. We'll keep on adding, depending on what the fiscals can provide. But it can be a choice or not, whether we sustain the operation of Border Management Authority. We have to, because it's a fifth law it's a state law enforcement agency in the country, after the police and the army. And you can't have a law enforcement agency that is just temporary when it was launched officially by the President himself.
Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Home Affairs Minister, as always, thanks very much indeed for your time on the AM Report.